Right. And Asim, I hear that you are going to be giving us a glimpse into the future of Microsoft data centers. Is that correct?
I sure am. Thank you very much, Christina. So, Microsoft is committed to creating a net zero impact for carbon, water, waste, and ecosystems for our data centers. How are they doing this? So, we're going to be joined by somebody who knows the answer to that. Please welcome Brian Janus.
Hey, Sam. Thanks for having me this morning.
Hi, Brian. So a few times, sometimes I get asked by members of the green kind of tech community, and it's always kind of whispered to me. They kind of whisper to me, does Microsoft have a full-time person dedicated
Okay,
to
thank you.
to greening their data centers? And I'm like, well, actually, yeah, we have a whole department of people. I think Brian, you are the GM for data center energy and sustainability. Why does Microsoft have a general manager for data center energy and sustainability?
Now, well, several years ago we didn't. As we started on our cloud journey, it became clear that energy and then the overall environmental impacts of our cloud infrastructure was going to be a significant issue for the company. So when I joined about 8.5 years ago, it was to, in essence, start this team and build up this muscle so that we could grow the cloud at the pace that was required to maintain the growth and demand for the services, but also do it in an environmentally responsible way.
That's right, because like 8.5 years ago, the cloud, we all feel the cloud is growing, but like 8.5 years ago, it was really starting to kick off, and especially with Microsoft's involvement at the very least. So, what did you do before the 8.5? Before you joined Microsoft, what were you doing before then?
Well, I had always worked in the energy sector, and I worked for mainly large industrial consumers of electricity. Things like steel mills, other manufacturing facilities, and it honestly was a bit of a surprise to me that I ended up in the tech sector, because when I was first approached by Microsoft, I was curious as to why a tech company would even need a person like me. But as I started learning more about how Microsoft was transforming its business, and how applications are moving to the cloud and what that entailed in terms of the infrastructure, the data centers that were needed to support that. I started to see that really the tech companies and the cloud companies were going to be the equivalent of the industrial end users of the 20th century, that we were really going to be the sort of the manufacturing industry in the sense of manufacturing data. And so as I learned more about that, I realized it was actually a perfect fit for the types of things that I work on.
Yeah, definitely makes sense. So, what does your department do? And what is it responsible for?
So we're responsible for all of the energy and resource management for our cloud infrastructure. So that means we're procuring energy, but we're also looking at things like water, waste, ecosystem impact associated with our cloud infrastructure. As the cloud has grown, the vast majority of our energy and resource consumption comes from our data centers. We represent more than 90%. Our data centers represent more than 90% of Microsoft's total energy consumption. So it's become a pretty significant aspect of how we manage our business, to think about the resource utilization and the resource intensity.
And that's right. So what are some of the core deliverables for your team? What are some things you're doing?
So the most important things for us are one, ensuring that we have access to resources, access to energy and water, so that we continue to grow the cloud. We have to think about the cost of those resources and how we manage this not immaterial expense that we now have. But it's also to grow in a sustainable way. To ensure that across all those different aspects around energy, that we're procuring renewable energy, water, that we're thinking about the impact of our impact on the potable water system in the communities we operate. Waste, we have a commitment to net zero waste operations by 2020. And then, of course, the ecosystem. So thinking about, for instance, net positive or net zero deforestation goals that we've established. So thinking about all the different impacts along the way of building out our infrastructure and ensuring that ultimately we have a net positive impact on the planet.
And that's like I love the word net positive impact. What does net positive impact actually mean, though? What does that mean for us?
Well, back in January, we had an announcement, a carbon announcement, and we committed the company to be carbon negative by 2030, and then by 2050 to actually pay back our entire climate debt, dating back to our founding in 1975. So what that means for us is that, we expect that the use of Microsoft services, our cloud services, will have a positive impact on the planet, in that we will be giving back more than we're actually taking. So this is things like 100% renewable, looking through our supply chain and helping to drive emissions out of say the embedded carbon in things like cement and steel that go into the building of the data centers, taking into account things like the manufacturing processes for our servers and ensuring that's being done in a sustainable way. So it's a really massive undertaking, and we've given ourselves 10 years to get there. But those of us who are on the front lines of this are really running full steam ahead right now to solve these challenges, because they are massive challenges, and they go far beyond just our own operations into our supply chain, which actually represents 75% of our total emissions.
Yeah, and I think I remember when we made that announcement, it was a bold mission. It's a big challenge, but we need to step up to this challenge, and then we in fact need a lot of other people to step up this challenge as well. So you mentioned 100% renewables. The goal is 100% renewable power for the data centers. How do you actually achieve that? How do you get to 100% renewables?
So the way we get to 100% renewables is by contracting directly with developers of renewable energy projects. And these companies will go out and build these projects on our behalf. And then we get to claim all of the energy produced for the life of that asset. And so these are long-term agreements that are ensuring that the power that's coming onto the grid is additive. In other words, we're not just buying credits from existing projects. Rather, we're ensuring that our partners are actually going out and building these projects to support the growth of our cloud.
So that's right. So if, for instance, we're building a data center in a region and we need to source the energy, the renewable energy for that data center, the additive strategy of ours, it means that you will always make sure that that purchase of renewables will create a new renewable source, be it a wind farm or a solar or something like that. That's our additive policy, is it?
That's right. Yeah. So last year we announced a new data center in Phoenix, for instance, and along with that, we also announced a 150 megawatt solar project with a partner of ours, First Solar. That's an Arizona-based company, and they're developing that project on our behalf. So that project's going to come online and support our growth in that Phoenix area data center. That'll just be the first phase. As the data center grows, we'll add more into that region. But that ensures that day one, we're running on 100% renewable for that cloud region.
So that kind of begs the question, doesn't it? So why go through this whole complexity of trying to connect to the grid and therefore make sure the grid has 100% of our energy from renewables is pumped into the grid? Why not just connect a data center directly to, say, a hydro power dam or something like that to get your clean energy?
That's a great question, and we actually get that a lot. Like, why even mess with the grid? Why don't we just generate all of our clean energy on site? The problem with that as sort of a strategy is that it pulls us out of really the most valuable asset we have, which is the grid itself. We actually want to be connected to the grid because the grid allows us to develop new solutions and leverage our own on-site assets to be interconnected and responsive. I mean, think of things like smart thermostats. right? Those are only valuable because you're connected to a grid. You can take a signal that, say, for instance, the grid is being constrained at the moment, and you can take a few degrees off of your thermostat. And so it's that network effect. It's not dissimilar to the cloud, right? I mean, you could say, well, why do you want to be connected to the cloud when you could store everything on your hard drive? Well, nobody wants to do that, because the value of the cloud is the fact that I'm part of a network and I can interconnect to data centers all over the world and leverage applications. The electric grid is the same way. And so we actually find value in being part of the broader grid. And so we want to think about how we design our systems, how we manage our own assets, our own on-site batteries, to be part of the solution, not to island and from the rest of the grid and not be part of that broader network.
And I think that also mirrors itself to myself as a developer, because if I'm developing on something that's off grid, nothing I do has an impact. Nothing I do can have a positive impact. If I reduce electricity, it doesn't matter, because it doesn't affect anything. It just affects the source that I'm coming from. But if your data center is 100% powered by renewables, doesn't that then mean, let's say it's a wind farm, that if the wind doesn't blow, the data center just switches off?
No. And so when we say 100% powered by renewable, really what we mean is that we're ensuring that for every megawatt hour that we're pulling off of the grid, that there is a megawatt hour somewhere going on the grid that is 100% renewable. And so what our ultimate goal is really the decarbonization of the electric grid. And so if you think about it like a swimming pool, if I have a swimming pool and it's got a bunch of dirty water in it, and on one side of the pool I pull out a cup of water, and the other side I pour in clean water. Over time, I'm going to change the makeup and the chemistry of that pool. Now the cup I'm pulling out on the one side is not the same as the cup I'm pulling in the other side, but I am changing the overall makeup. And that's really the ultimate goal, is how do we transition the grid from what it is today to what we want it to be, which is running on clean energy 100% of the time, all the time, for all customers.
Can you imagine a world right now where all of our energy is provided by renewables? It's quite exciting, a quite exciting thought for me. We have a question from the audience. I thought I'd ask you. So Stephen is asking, will customers be able to see the carbon cost of their use of Microsoft services? I think we have something in the works there, don't we?
We do, yeah. In fact, as part of our announcement back in January, we released the Carbon Cloud Calculator. So you can actually go in and for any customer, they could be able to go in and see what is the impact of the services that they're using on our cloud, and how does it compare to, for instance, using that in a traditional enterprise environment. So you can see the improvement that you achieve by virtue of being part of Microsoft's cloud. And so that is generally available today. And we're going to continue to build out that tool so that it goes even beyond just your consumption of energy to look at the full supply chain. So that's in the works right now, and that is getting built out and will likely be deployed later this year.
Yeah, I remember when that announcement came out. It was a very, very exciting time for me. That was one of the questions I did get asked before, and so we I still believe are the first cloud to ever release something, or attempt to release something like that. So great work.
Exactly.
So you also,
and it's in the interest of transparency, right? We want our customers to understand what we're doing, and so we're very open about the impact that we're having on the environment today, and then how we want to change that, and what are the goals that we've set out. And with the announcement in January, it was very bold, and to be frank, we don't know how we're going to get there entirely for all the things that we committed to. It really was a very bold statement and commitment on behalf of our senior leadership, where they said, hey, this is where we want to go, and we trust all of you to figure this out, and maybe we know 80% of how we're going to get there, but we trust you to figure out the remaining 20. And so it's an exciting time for all of us that get to be part of this.
Yeah, and that is how I feel also, being part of Microsoft, being part of these conversations. There is just the question being asked, how are we going to achieve those goals? And there's a mobilization and an energy inside Microsoft where everybody's asking themselves these questions, and we're trying to figure out what that looks like. Thank you so much, Brian, for your time today. It's been really, really interesting to speak to you.
Thanks, Sam. Great talking to you.
Great talking to you.